If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another CD collection update for you guys. I'm trying to get caught up before the end of the year, and as of right now, I got one more update coming up, and then that will be it for 2023, and then I can start building up for videos for 2024 going forward. So this update, I'm going to admit, is not really all metal. In fact, the majority of these CDs that I'm going to be showing off in this update are all from a trip that I took back in early November, where I went to Gulf Shores, Alabama, and found a few record shops that had CDs. They were all used, but I was able to pick up some really cool stuff. So, just to preface, this is mostly classic rock stuff that I grew up on that you're going to see in the update, with some metal. I did find some metal, and I got a bonus CD that I bought during the in-between then and this update. And actually, why don't we get started with that bonus one, and that is Castrator with Defiled in Oblivion. So this is the debut album from this all-lady death metal supergroup featuring Robin from Gruesome on bass. And yeah, I was kind of hesitant about checking this band out because reading through their lyrical themes, it's like, I'd like to keep my junk intact, please, because I'm a man and I want to keep my junk. But musically speaking, though, it's brutal, it's sinister. Like, this is almost like the perfect hybrid of Cannibal Corpse, Suffocation. I would say Blood Red Throne would be a nice comparison point. Lots of triplet chugs, but a lot of like brutal death metal tropes going on here. And even the vocals, for lady vocals, they're pretty low. Like, she is just projectile vomiting the shit out of her vocals on this album. So again, while lyrically it's like, just, I want to keep my junk intact, musically it is pretty fucking awesome, and I do want to check out what they got in store next. So, Castrator. Now, the rest of the CDs that I'm going to be showing off are all from the Alabama trip. And the first one, probably the biggest surprise out of them all, I did not expect to find this at a record store in Alabama, of all places. Cancer, The Sins of Mankind. And this is actually an OG copy from 1993 on Restless Records. And yeah, I mean, what more can I say about this band that I haven't said, at least as far as their early output? Like, some of the most underrated, thrashy death metal you can hear from England. After all, the only classic album I am missing now is the debut, To the Gory End. Like, I have Death Shall Rise, and that's one of my favorite death metal debuts of the 90s, and then this was the follow-up. While not as good as the first two, I would say it's still a welcomed addition to the Cancer discography. And then, after this album, very, very spotty, like almost to the point where I'm hesitant to check out anything beyond this. But yeah, this is a really cool album, and like I said, probably the big surprise. I did not expect to find this in Alabama, of all places, and an OG copy at that. So it's pretty cool that I got one of those. So yeah, if you are a fan of early death, I would say perhaps early Malevolent Creation, Massacre, and maybe even Obituary, check out Cancer if you haven't already. I assume everybody who's watching this has checked this band out, but in case you haven't, check them out. Especially this and the two albums previous. So yeah. Anyways, so this next one, probably going to irk some people, but this was an album I grew up on when I was just a little kid, because I was 10 when this album came out. Green Day, American Idiot. So, I'm not the biggest fan of punk, especially pop punk, but Green Day was always one of those bands that I could not escape when I was a kid. And to me, there are only two good Green Day albums. Dookie, which I already got, and this one, American Idiot. So, of course, most people should know about this album through the hits like American Idiot, Jesus of Suburbia, Holiday, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Saint Jimmy, Wake Me Up When September Ends. Like, there are some good, catchy songs on here that do have some balls or great storytelling to it. But yeah, after this, nah. So yeah, I'm just happy I got the two good Green Day albums in my collection now. So yeah, call me crazy if you want, but hey, this is some good stuff. I can't ignore it. It was all over the place when I was a kid, so plays a little bit of nostalgic weight for me with this album. So yeah, Green Day. Alright, and then next up, and excuse the price tag on it, I haven't gotten around to getting them off yet, but next we have one of the other few metal albums I got, Hammerfall, Legacy of Kings. I can't remember how many albums into their career this was. I want to say this was either the second or third album in their career. This came out in 1998 or 97, somewhere in there. And this is an OG copy as well from Nuclear Blast Records. So, yeah, while I'm not the world's biggest power metal fan, it just depends on how the band does it. Hammerfall does a style of power metal that's still rooted in classic heavy metal. Less about the cheesiness and more about the riffs and the old school heavy metal mentality. And this album is certainly proof of that, like tracks like Dreamland, the title track, Let the Hammer Fall, Warriors of Faith. Like, there's some really good stuff on this album, and I might need to get some more of the early Hammerfall material because, like I said, one of the few European power metal bands during the 90s that kept their toe in classic heavy metal and not embracing so much of the crazy operatic stuff and overtly symphonic elements, which I do like from time to time, but I do like my power metal to have a little bit more grit and a little more focused on riffs. Hammerfall is one of those bands that do it pretty damn well, if you ask me. So yeah, Legacy of Kings. Alright, now we're going to get really into some classic rock, starting with this. We have Harts' Greatest Hits, which was all the way up until about 1980. So, Hart was always one of those bands that my dad loved through the radio when I was a wee little lad. And then even, like, watching back, like, the Behind the Music documentaries, as well as listening to more stuff. And Hart's a big classic rock band for me. Classic hard rock, folk rock. And this is a pretty cool must-have for any fan of classic rock, if you ask me. If you can't get the full lengths, this is a very good alternative. This spans, I would say, if I can recall, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least the first 5 albums. So you got the big ones like Barracuda, Crazy on You, Dreamboat Annie, which is a beautiful song, Magic Man, Dog and Butterfly, which is beautiful, Baby Lestrange, Eating It Up, or Even It Up, I should say, and even a cover of Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll, which is pretty nice. So, yeah, if you are a fan of folky classic hard rock, this is definitely going to be up your alley. After all, the Wilson sisters still rip to this day. Ann and Nancy, wonderful duo right there of sisterhood within rock and roll. So yeah, Hart. And the oldest album I got in the collection, from 1967, we have the Jimi Hendrix Experience with Are You Experienced? One of the most legendary classic rock albums of all time. Like, most people should know about this album. After all, you got the 3 big hits of Purple Haze, Hey Joe, and Foxy Lady, which are still staples to this day, especially Purple Haze. That might be my favorite Jimi Hendrix song of all time, just because of those catchy riffs, and Jimmy's vocals are just hypnotic to me. And just hearing what he does on guitar is still mind-blowing, and still arguably to this day, maybe until Eddie Van Halen, the greatest guitarist of all time, And it's such a shame he was taken from us way too soon, because I feel he still had a lot more to give to music. But yeah, I'm happy to have the debut Hendrix album right here. And then next up, to further complete my Led Zeppelin collection of the albums I want, I finally got Physical Graffiti. The epic double album from, let's see, 1975. Classic album, after all. You got songs like Custard Pie, Black Country again, or not again, Black Country Woman, but especially Kashmir with those like epic folky symphonics going on there, and of course that riff that still rings true to this day, and just awesome. And funny how the song Houses of the Holy is on here and not on the album Houses of the Holy. Like, it's kind of a weird thing how that happens. I don't know if it's a UK thing, because even like the latest Crucimentum album had Charnel Passages not on the album Charnel Passages. I don't know, it could be a British thing, I'm not sure, but still, classic hard rock, borders on heavy metal, like early proto-metal possibly, but still legendary, can't go wrong. And now we get to a pair, and that is Meatloaf, and I have 2 of the 3 Bat Out of Hell albums, the first one and the second one, Back Into Hell. After all, I feel like Meatloaf kind of gets a bit of a bad rep, if you ask me. I think he's still can't believe he's gone, but one of the most phenomenal rock vocalists of all time. Like, he knew how to showcase his range, and just a big presence on stage. And these are 2 albums that certainly prove that he had great vocal abilities. Especially on this one, the first album, Bat Out of Hell. Just, what more can you say about it? And then you get to the second one, which came out in 1993, where he had some more hits, like, let's see, the song Back Into Hell, Out of the Frying Pan, but probably the big is I'd Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That. Even the music video is pretty interesting. But yeah, I'm happy to finally have some Meatloaf in the collection. May he rest in peace, God rest his soul. But yeah, 2 classics right here from 2 completely different eras. And now we're finally going to get back into a little bit of metal, as next we have 9 Inch Nails' Broken EP. Probably one of only 2 metal releases from 9 Inch Nails. The other one would be the Downward Spiral, which I need to get at some point because I do enjoy that album. But I was happy to have found this at a record shop, and this is the Digipack release from 1992. And I mean, one of the best EPs of all time. Like, all these songs kick ass, like Wish, Happiness and Slavery. The first one I ever checked out from this was the song Last, because of a friend of mine who's a wrestling fan. He would use that as a theme song for video games and such, and that was a heavy, catchy song. And it's like, 9 Inch Nails just basically know how to hop into a genre and make something that's as good as anything else within that genre, and then move on to the next. So this, like, they've always been legends of industrial rock, but this is one of only 2 releases where they went industrial metal, and this was one of those pivotal releases for industrial metal as a whole. And while I'm not the biggest fan of industrial metal, unless it's Fear Factory, Rammstein, and early Godflesh, this is exceptional right here. Like I said, one of the best EPs of all time. Can't go wrong with it. I need to get Downward Spiral, and then I'd have pretty much all the 9 Inch Nails I could want, unless I really dive into them and get the rest of them. But yeah. Alright, and then this one I kind of got as a bit of a novelty, and that is Nirvana's MTV Unplugged Live in New York. So this came out in early 1994, so just before Kurt Cobain committed suicide. This was their MTV Unplugged appearance, and I was happy to have gotten this, and I mainly got it particularly for their cover of Where Did You Sleep Last Night. That was like one of the most unique Unplugged cover songs I ever heard, and like Kurt just projecting the shit out of his voice, not just on that song, but across the board on this entire album. And like even doing acoustic versions of Come As You Are, On a Plane. Yeah, just really, really powerful stuff. And the fact, I think this is the last thing they did before Kurt's suicide happened, and some people say it killed grunge. This was a big one for them, so yeah, check it out. And then we get to an album that I was so happy to have found in good shape and at a good price and finally got in the collection. Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. Of course, what else can be said about this album that hasn't been said in the past? It's one of the masterpieces of progressive metal. Really kind of the album that kind of truly ushered in modern progressive metal. Whereas before this, you had the earlier Queensryche stuff. While still proggy, it was definitely far more rooted into classic heavy metal, maybe even power metal to some extent. You had Fate's Warning kind of doing a similar thing, except a little bit on the thrashier end of the scale. Watchtower doing more thrashy, proggy stuff. Savatage, that like hybrid of kind of similar to Queensryche with prog, power metal, and classic heavy metal. But it was really this album where progressive metal was truly solidified. And then after this, you would see Dream Theater come up. Fate's Warning would get more progressive. You would see Tool come out in the 90s. You would see so much on the heels of this album. After all, big concept album. After all, we all should know about it. After all, songs like Revolution Calling, the title track, I Don't Believe in Love, and Eyes of a Stranger, which is still maybe my favorite Queensryche song. I don't know, there's quite a few. But yeah, this masterpiece. Arguably the best album of 1988. I don't know, that year is very competitive for me, but this, you could definitely make a case for. Alright, and then next up, another bit of a nostalgic trip, and that is Red Hot Chili Peppers with Californication. This, 1999, I believe? Yeah, 1999 when this came out. Probably still to this day their biggest seller. After all, you got so many great songs. I've been listening lately to the song Around the World over and over again because I remember first hearing it and seeing that music video when I was 6 years old. When the video came out in 2000, I remember watching it, kind of being mesmerized by it. But also songs like Other Side, the title track, Scar Tissue, where they get a lot more bluesy and more emotional, so to speak. But yeah, can't go wrong with this album if you ask me. If you love hard rock, alternative rock, blues rock kind of mashed together, and a lot of funk rock, this is definitely going to be up your alley. And next up, we're back to more classic rock as we have Steve Miller Band, Greatest Hits 1974 to 78. So I've talked about Steve Miller on this channel in the past as far as like how I got into music, because I would hear a lot of these songs on classic rock radio stations from my parents. And when I saw this and I saw the songs that were listed, I'm like, I gotta have it. After all, you have Rockin' Me, Joker, Fly Like an Eagle. Those were the big ones that stood out to me, and pretty much got this just on those three songs alone. And yeah, I've always been a fan of those songs, and I will still love them until the day I'm put in the dirt. Alright, next up we get an early 90s classic, and that is Stone Temple Pilots with Core, the debut album from this California grunge band. And of course I had to get this because this is a classic early 90s grunge album. After all, you got kind of on the heavier spectrum of grunge, like it's got more hard rock and, dare I say, like alternative metal inspiration going on here. Songs like Sex Type Thing, Creep, Plush, but even cooler, grungier tracks like Wicked Garden. After all, Scott Weiland, I think, still has a unique voice, and had a unique voice. Again, I still can't believe he's gone, but yeah, awesome early 90s shit right here. And then speaking of Scott Weiland, we have another nostalgic one for me from when I was 10 years old. Velva Revolver, Contraband. the debut album from this hard rock supergroup featuring 3/5 of Guns N' Roses and Scott Weiland. So you got Scott Weiland, Slash, Duff McKagan, Matt Sorum, and I forget the name of the second guitarist that was in the band next to Slash, but yeah, this was an album that my brother Rue, may he rest in peace, got me into when I was little. He was like 23, 24 when this came out. I was just 9, 10 years old. First hearing the songs Slither and Falling to Pieces, or Fall to Pieces. But yeah, I knew I had to get this album because I've been wanting this forever, but it just kept slipping my head. Finally got it, and I'm glad to have it. Now I need to get the other Velva Revolver album. I think it was Libertat, I believe. And then I'd have both releases. And part of me wishes that Slash and them could have found a new singer. Like Corey Taylor, I think, could have been a great fit for this band after Scott got fired, and could have kept it going, and I would have probably stayed with him. But we did get 2 pretty good albums, and this was the better of the 2. And now finally we get to our final pair, and that is Yes. And we have their compilation called Classic Yes and their album 90125. So Classic Yes is basically greatest hits of everything up to 1981. So pretty much you get like some of the big ones that everybody knows, like Roundabout. But the main reason why I actually thought this was the debut Yes album, because I saw it had the track I've Seen All Good People, which is a masterpiece song. I eventually need to get the earlier Yes stuff, like around the same time as Fragile and Close to the Edge, which I already got. But yeah, I'm glad to have a compilation of some stuff from around that time frame. And then this one, 90125, this one was, let's see, what year? 1983. And this is a big shift. Like, this is definitely more kind of comparable to, like, 80s Genesis with Phil Collins, that poppier era. This is, like, the poppy era of Yes, because you got their biggest hit. Oh, well, I don't know, Roundabout still, I would say, their biggest hit, but in terms of success, Owner of a Lonely Heart, which was on this. It's cool to have 2 vastly different eras of Yes in the collection. The early prog stuff and their 80s poppier stuff. But yeah, can't go wrong with old school Yes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, knocks out yet another update. As I said, I got 1 more in the back pocket before the end of the year, and it's going to be pretty much label-based. Wow, my voice went to shit like I was smoking there. But yeah, I got 1 more, maybe 2 more updates left before the year is over, and we'll go from there heading into 2024. So, what was your favorite albums from this stack that I just presented? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.